One of the toughest subjects to talk about, let alone think about, is estate planning. But we need to get something in writing and do it sooner than later. So where do you start? We're going to ask the lawyer today, sponsored by Tapella and Eberspacher Law Firm in Charleston, and attorney Jacob Smallhorn is joining us with some answers. It's good to have you, Jake.
Thank you for having me.
You know, there's no time like the present because you never know when something's going to happen, really. And so why do we need to start looking at estate planning, and what goes into that?
Well, what I expect from a client when they come in for estate planning, the only thing I expect from them is for them to tell me where they want their assets to go, who they would want to take care of them if they're disabled, or they're incapable of making decisions for themselves, or they have an issue with children, and and they may need a guardianship. And then it's my job to listen to what they have to tell me and what their goals are, and craft a plan for them that will take care of their needs.
So there are really two parts to this, it seems like to me. So you have considerations for when you're still living or hanging on. We don't like to think about that either. And then the part after you've actually passed, when your assets or the things in your life need to be distributed, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the portion like you're referring to when you're still alive. So you need to set up certain structures to make things go smoothly in case you become incapacitated.
Yeah, the way that you do that, it's called a power of attorney. There are powers of attorney for property and powers of attorney for health care. Many people are familiar with a power of attorney for health care when they go to the doctor. Not everybody knows that you can have a power of attorney for property. A power of attorney is a document where you appoint someone to act as your agent and help make decisions for you, and they're vested with authority to go withdraw money from your bank account, pick up your prescriptions, pick up medical records. Yeah. If you suffer from, the important reason why you need a power of attorney is because if you don't have one and you become incapacitated, the only other way to have someone else make decisions for you is to do what's called a guardianship, and that can be a relatively expensive legal proceeding. So there are some simple estate planning techniques that we use to avoid large expenses for people down the road.
Sure, sure. When you talk about these things that go into estate planning, I mean, there's a lot of different aspects to this. Let me ask you, a lot of people, when they think estate planning, the first thing they think is wills, right? But that's just part of it.
That's just the beginning point for the discussion that I have with clients. Yeah. A will is a document that basically takes care of all the assets that you have that you haven't already directed to go somewhere else. So if you have a bank account that's payable on death, that won't pass through your estate, through your will. It'll pass through that payable on death designation.
Okay.
So we talk about bank accounts. We talk about avoiding things going through your will. We talk about trust, which is another technique that gives you some control. It can give you control of your assets before you pass away by putting it into a living trust. You can have a testamentary trust that takes effect in your will, and you'll be able to control what happens with your assets after you pass away.
Interesting. Okay, but this is why we have these kinds of discussions.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, because it feels complex. I mean, you're breaking it down in its simple parts, but this is why you need a lawyer to help draw these things up. So what is the number one question you think you get from your clients in terms of estate planning?
Well, I think the number one question that I get is, why do I need any of this? Why do I need these documents? What's the purpose? And the purpose is so that your wishes are carried out. Yeah. I mean, that's what we work hard. We earn, income and collect assets, and we want to give them to our families. We want to give them the way that we want them to be given, and not through some statute that may or may not reflect what we think
Sure, because when you don't have that will or you don't have that plan laid out in advance, then you're basically at the will of whatever the court system ends up doing. And the laws are not as simple as you would think. For example, and I know we don't have time, unfortunately, to go into it, but just because you pass away, all of your assets don't necessarily go to your spouse. Yeah. So under Illinois law. So like, instead of dealing with all that, you contact an attorney and you ask the expert. So thanks for being here, Jake. We appreciate it. Jake Smallhorn is with the law firm of Tapella and Eberspacher in Charleston. Lots of things to consider when you're looking at estate planning. TapellaLaw.com is a great place to start. They have some basic information on there. We'll get you in contact with Jake, and then you can have that peace of mind that comes along with having an estate plan. More information at CILiving.tv.